like this. Sarah's background is recruitment. How many ex-recruiters are in the room now selling? Well done. You moved on to the bright side. We still love recruiters. Without a doubt, being a recruiter gives you some of the best skills in the business. And it's no surprise to me that most of you in this room got your job because of some of the recruiters from Demetria. So I do want to do a round of applause to the recruitment team at Demetria. It is blocked. So enough from me. Pete, you're up.
I think first of all we should have a round of applause for someone that isn't one of the speakers tonight, and that's James. But wait a moment, and also Lauren. I remember a couple of years ago when James came to me and started explaining the idea that he had. The thing that he's done now, I was in Paris recently for SaaStr or SaaStock, I can't remember which one is which. I can tell you that SaaS Growth is a better conference, and the sales network that we've built here, James has built here. I take a lot of credit out. The network that James has built here is really first class, and it's a pleasure to see you all here tonight. But a round of applause, I think, please. And the bar has been set really high tonight because Jack and Ben, that was first class. Thank you for doing that. I learned a lot. The sad thing is that all of us are taught to give speeches in threes. So by the end of tonight, you're going to have 9 things to I'm not sure if you're going to be able to manage that, but do your best. If you're here tonight, you're elite, or you're on your way to being elite. You have to be, by definition. I think James already alluded to it earlier. You didn't go home, you haven't gone to do something else, you come here to network with your peers for various reasons, but all in order to progress your career. That means you're part of a very select group. There's an awful lot of SaaS businesses in London, there's a heck of a lot in the world. There aren't that many people that are good enough to really propel those companies, and you have a chance to be like that because you're here tonight. Sam and Sarah, that work with me at Ometria, are both great examples of eliteness. I'm going to give you, afterwards, after they've spoken, a couple of ideas I've got of how you can think about whatever it is you do next. Whether that is in the company you're in now, which is just fine, or whether that's in a different business, and that's just fine too. But a couple of ideas for how to think about your next role, because if you are elite, you don't go to interviews, you interview them. That's how it should be. I'm going to give you a couple of tips around how to do that. Sarah and Sam are both elite, and I'd like you just to hear, just for 1 minute from each of them, on their journey at Ometria and why. I don't think they're going to talk about why they're elite. I believe them to be elite. I think they're going to talk about their journey. You can make your own judgment. We'll start with you, Sarah. So, Sarah, if you want to join me on stage. So Sarah has been at Ometria, getting on for 2 years, and is a great success story because she has moved from an SDR role up to an AE role, which I know a lot of you will want to do at some point. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about your journey.
I do, thanks Pete, thank you. So I just wanted to share a little story about my journey. So I thought the way to get ahead in sales was by being selfish. I was wrong. I understood very early on that I had to master the art of being a great SDR in order to progress in my career. So being that great SDR gives you that foundation to be an epic salesperson. So one challenge that I had that I wasn't really aware of when I started, which I actually felt held me back an awful lot in that role, was that I tended to be very selfish. And I had this lack of self-awareness and didn't understand. And I guess this really comes from the fact that I've really had to work hard to get good jobs. I've had to fight really hard through university and to get to where I am now. And having noticed this is having an impact on me, my teammates, and overall it was giving me a staggered progression. And I wanted to be next level. So, for example, I wasn't aware that my sometimes negative attitude would affect others around me. And if things weren't going my way, such as not booking that meeting or hitting that specific target, it was affecting the people around me and causing kind of lumpy performance. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be elite. I wanted to be epic. So that was one of the really hardest things that I had to learn, because it's quite personal and it's very hard to look at yourself and understand that you need to be self-aware, and I had to take responsibility for that. So that's what I did. I took control of the situation. I had to change the way I prepared, how I presented myself, in my self-confidence, in my opinion, and the way I was around others. And this was recognised. So I believe the key to success is consistency in everything I do, and being self-aware about your actions and how it impacts other people. This will enable you to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up we have Sam. So Sam is also a success story at Ometria, and that's because he's gone from SDR to a senior SDR. Well,
So choosing a role, choosing a company, choosing the people that you want to work with is a really daunting thing. When I was in my third year of university, I had an amazing opportunity to work abroad, and I chose to work in a startup in Lisbon, and I struck absolute gold. I joined what would be one of the most successful startups to come out of Europe for a really long time, and I'd never really been in sales before. I was a brand new SDR there, and I didn't really know much about the startup world either. But I kind of went on with it, and I quickly moved into a closing role there. But I wanted a role, after a year and a half there, moving back to London, completing university, I'd hit a bit of a ceiling, and I wanted to shift gears and move and kind of get on to the next chapter. I started to look around for similar opportunities, and given that I'd been in a closing role before, it kind of makes sense to go into something like that. But I wanted to do it with a backdrop of learning as much as possible, not kind of proactively going for the highest salary or like the sparkliest new toy on the market. So I wanted a role that's going to challenge me from a day-to-day basis, where I can learn from the people around me, and a place where I can flourish in whatever I wanted to do. And it turned out that my experience beforehand was great, but I didn't really have the foundational base knowledge for doing exactly what I wanted to do. So when I spoke to Pete, and he suggested that I actually move back into a BDE role, I was really precautious, because what would it look like on my CV? Was my experience not worth much? Was I really fit for a SaaS sales role? But this was not a step back. This is a huge opportunity, because for sustained and continued success in a sales role, you just can't fake it. So for the first 10 years of your sales career, understanding and making sure that you've got the foundational knowledge there, so that you don't build yourself a ceiling to then build difficulties in the future for you. Thank you.
So I wish I could say that my own story was the same as Sarah's and Sam's, but I don't think I really understood what it was to try to be elite when I was younger. So I'm aware I'm going to talk for more than 7 minutes, so you can try giving me the number. So my story is completely different. I had no idea. When I was 20 or 21, which was in the last century, I was at university enjoying myself. In fact, it's not even true. My wife was at university enjoying herself, and I was working in Burger King. I spent 7 years there. I got to assistant manager, and it took me a long time. And I remember my dad called me and said, Pete, you have to get a proper job. I'm going to buy you a ticket to go to London and get a job. So I went to this graduate fair, except it wasn't really a graduate fair, because it was all jobs for bus drivers. And there were just 2 companies recruiting for graduates. So one was BMW, and the other was this dodgy publishing company. I didn't know they were dodgy at the time. And they said, well, we can give you an interview tomorrow. And I said, well, I've got to go back to Wales tomorrow, tonight in fact. So they said, well, if you can get to Goode Street, you can have an interview now. So I said, all right. So I went to Goode Street, and the interview was 15 minutes long. This guy called Carlo, who was the HR manager, he asked me a few questions, and then he left the room. And then I had to do a quick call with him to read a script. And then he came back in and said, you've got the job. And I said, well, great, I'll take it. And he said, do you know what you're doing? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, you're going to move with your wife from Wales to London for this job. I said, yeah, of course. So I thought, when they told me that I would get £70,000 a year, which to me was like incredible, I thought I won't get 70 a year, but I might get 30 or 40. The reality was I got £10,400 a year, which just covered us in the shittiest house in London. Which, if you ever fall on hard times, I'll tell you where it is. It's under the M11 flyover, opposite the Gypsy camp, next to the Unigate Dairy in South Woodford. So we lived there for a while, but we're making light of it, but I couldn't afford anything. I didn't get any deals. I was one of 15 people that joined that day. Within 3 months, I was the only person left. So 14 people had either been fired or had thought, stuff this, I can't manage this at all. And it was very, very tough. And so you start to make yourself ill because you're working so hard and you come in early in the morning, you stay late in the evening, you don't understand why it's not clicking. Until on Friday they told me, Pete, you're getting fired, you've got 7 days. So I was about to lose my job. And my wife at the time was sick, so what am I going to do? I couldn't even pay my bills. I had to get a cheque. They pay you in a cheque at the end of the week. You take the cheque, I don't think it's there anymore, to the corner of Tottenham Court Road, and some dude takes 15% of it and gives you the cash, which means you have to give it to the bank, which means you can afford your tube home and pay your bills and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I was going to get fired, and on the Friday that I was supposed to leave, if I'd got a deal, I was okay. So on that particular day, in those days we didn't have laptops and emails and all that kind of nonsense. So the fax machine would ring. If there's anyone in the room that could remember this, probably only me. The fax machine would ring and you'll run over to the fax machine, see if there's a deal, and then with the fax machines, you don't know this, I know, but they come through really, really slowly. So you don't know if it's going to be an order form or if it's going to be an advert for printing. Which it often was. And so this deal started coming out, but by the way, I wasn't going to get a deal. So this deal started coming out. And this guy, who I still know quite well, a guy called Ajay Atukawala, was going to get a deal. And this deal came out, £2,000, smallest deal we could do. He said, at least. So I signed my name on the bottom. I got paid my £60 commission, 15%. That was it, saved my job. Came back the next day, on the following Monday, got a deal, and it took off from there. I didn't save my job, I didn't do anything. And so what I wanted to talk to you about was when we have people like Sam and Sarah who've thought in a much, much smarter way about what it means to be a salesperson. I said earlier that you should be interviewing the people that you go and see. If you're looking for a role, or you just want to get promoted in the company that you're in, you should be interviewing. But first of all, you've got to figure out what you need to know. And I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of salespeople, and rarely do they ask the right kind of questions. Sometimes they're structured well, but rarely do they ask the right kind of questions. And the reason for that is I don't think people think through what they're supposed to be doing. So I thought I'd leave you with three ideas that you can think through and adapt so that next time you're ready, you're thinking in a deeper way about your career. So the first of those, there's a study recently in the Harvard Business Review that shows that 70% of CEOs will tell you that their only job, or rather their most important job, is to create a space of safety in which their employees can operate. And you need to find out if the company that you're looking at is giving you that space of safety. But what does that mean? How do you even ask that question? The reason you want it is because it's proven that if you're operating in a safe environment, then your cortisol levels drop, your fight or flight reflexes drop, you're able to experiment, you're able to try things, you're more likely to make a mistake and learn from the mistake rather than be terrified about what you're doing. If you're operating in a position of fear, you will be less successful. So if you're going to create a space of safety, how do you find out if that organisation is going to give you that space of safety? And the key word here, Sarah mentioned earlier, is self-awareness. Is the person in front of you is interviewing you self-aware? So you're not going to find out for sure with one question. There are many, many things you can ask. But I recommend that you ask this question. Tell me about a mistake that you made in the last week that impacted people around you. And what you're looking for, because when you ask a question like this, you need to have a number of categories of answer. So category number one is they can't answer. Like, do not go and work in that company unless you're desperate to go and live in South Woodford under the MLA. Second, they may think for a while and maybe they'll come up with a reasonable answer, but you can't get the feeling that because they're looking at the ceiling and making it up, that they haven't really been asked this before and they certainly haven't thought it through. If somebody can answer quickly, all of us make mistakes all of the time. It's normal, and in a great environment, you should be making mistakes, learning from them and moving on. Therefore, they should have thought through that process, and a leader should be able to lead properly. And if a leader is leading properly, they will be creating a sense of safety for you, which means that they will be a self-aware individual. Find out if they're self-aware. If they're not, I recommend that you don't go there. Second thing is values. So much is spoken about values. You'll see it constantly in your feed on LinkedIn all the time, but I don't think anyone really knows what it means. The key is it doesn't really matter, within reason, what the values of the organisation are that you are thinking about joining. What matters is your values. And that's quite hard to articulate. If I ask a candidate, what are your values, they can come up with a good answer usually, but most people haven't really thought it through. I recommend that over the next couple of weeks you think through, what are my values, what are the things I really care about? And not something that you aspire to, that's good too, but something that you actually are now, something that you live by, something where when there's a tough decision to make, your moral compass guides you in a particular direction. Once you've figured that out, here's the question you can ask. This is one of my 3 values that I try to live by. Which of your company's values is most similar? And can you tell me whether or not you think that I would be a good fit based on that? It's a really smart question to ask. First of all, you're trying to figure out, do they even know their own values? Second, you want to find out if they can make the connection. Do they think in this kind of way? Or are values meaningless things that they put on the wall and look kind of cool, they don't really talk about? If you get a good answer to that, then you know that you're going in a good direction. Final thing to think about after values and after thinking about sense of safety is mental wellness. Now, James told me that there's 120 people who bought tickets tonight. That means that 40 of us in this room will have some kind of mental health issue. So you may be in the fortunate 80 that do not. Doesn't really matter, because if you want to be an elite performer, think about what it takes to be elite. Elite performers need to have incredibly high levels of resilience, because you're going to be in a pressured environment a lot of the time. You'll be putting yourself in those positions because of the kind of individual that you are. Therefore, you need a place that understands how to look after your mental wellness. So the question that I recommend that you ask is simply, of your mental wellness programs, which one has proven to be the most effective? They can't pretend to have one. They have to show that they have them, they've thought it through, and that they're able to give you a benefit. If you can do those 3 things, you know you will have found an elite organisation. The kind of company that won't like you asking questions like that, honestly, you don't want to be working in those kind of companies, and they're less and less around at the moment. So I recommend thinking about those 3 questions. It enables you, who should be or are an elite performer, to end up in an elite organisation. So many times, people get hired and they didn't realise what the company was really like. Why? You didn't ask the right questions. And it's so few people that do ask the right questions. So, I'll leave you with that. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing this story.